we're live. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to be building the MRZ a bit more. Now, I wanted to do something a tiny bit different. I'm just inspecting, actually. Before we do that, let's turn on some lights, because it's really dark here. There we go. That's a bit better. Just inspecting the top part here where I ended up putting some, let's add a bit more light there while I'm at it, where I put the nail polish. And that seems to have come out fairly well. I wonder if I can get that sheen on it so you can see it. Black on black is actually really hard to photograph, but there you can see at the top there. Doesn't look too bad. Looks about the same in real life, but that's fine. Let's just adjust the light a bit more. Now, I thought we'd do something a bit different. So we're supposed to continue on with the front steering. But I looked to my left and found out I had the ball greases from Atomic. And I thought I actually might work on the rear diff here, as you can see here, and get that built. And then depending on how long that takes, and if I've got some time, finish off the front suspension setup. So, wow, that rear suspension setup is actually pretty solid. I'm really super happy with that. I think that alone is going to make it a very nice vehicle. The other thing is I had one of these spare, so just one of the high voltage Atomic servos. Fits perfectly in the front here, as you'd expect, because it is an Atomic car. I could have used my normal ones, but I had one of these Atomic high voltage ones spares, and I thought I might as well use it. And the interesting thing about this one compared to the ones I normally use is this lead here was a tiny bit longer. So it's going to give me a bit more flexibility about where I put my electronics here. When I did just a quick pre-fit, I didn't actually have a lot of space here, and from memory I needed a slightly longer cable, so basically it's a good opportunity to finally use this one up. That works pretty well. Cool, without further ado, let's get into building the gear diff. So we're going to need bag 11. And it looks like all the gear diff stuff's in there. So I'll put this to the side for the moment. Hopefully I don't need it anymore. I had a quick look at how the construction goes with this, and it seems pretty straightforward. As I said in my pre-review of the manual, it does have some innovative features in terms of changing how many teeth are on the rear gear. So I think that if you're jumping between tracks, that'd definitely be a bit of a killer feature. So you've got this little gear thing. Actually, I might just quickly set the video for... I'm going to just quickly set the focus on the camera so it doesn't do that shimmery stuff. Focus, turn off autofocus, update, let's put that at 20. 15 is good. So we've got this gear piece here, and that just slides onto this. So normally you'd end up replacing this entire piece every time you want to change gears, but this one you can just, without disassembling the rear diff, slide this piece on and off, which is kind of awesome. So a quick look at how that all goes together now. Okay, it goes like that. Cool, so let's close this silly little window here first. Gonna need some ball bearings as well, which are probably in another bag. Yes, they are. Now, the one thing I have not decided is if I go for a stiff grease or a light grease with the rear diff. Still a bit undecided. These bearings all do look the same. Do I need a half shielded? I'll have to measure this up with the calipers, I think. Use these calipers. Let's zero these out. These are 2.3 by 7, and they're what, 5 on the inside, 2.9. What else do I have? Honestly, they're probably the ones I need. We can actually compare it by going up or down, probably down. Okay, so that's a completely different one. So what we can probably do is just measure this against the shaft to see if they fit or not. 362, that fits on, and then this was a 582, so that goes on that plastic piece. So I think I do actually need a larger one. And I'm going to pick, maybe it's this really, really large one. Yeah, actually looking at it, it might be this really, really, there's only one of them that's this large, so put that there. That's 8 on the outside, yep, so that's the one I want. Now this is half shielded on both sides, half shielded and no shield. So I'm going to put the half shield on the outside. Well, it's hard to tell. So this picture here, there's a blue ring here, so that might indicate the half shield goes on the inside. But whatever. It's not like it's going to kill it. In fact, having a look at this, I kind of feel the half shield should be on the outside. So this looks like a bit of a tight fit. Get my pinky in there to see if I can force that in. What I ended up doing is forcing the bearing onto my pinky. Press fit that in. That looks pretty good. Now we look for the bit. It's got a squarish chunk out of it. It's not that. That looks good. Did I put that on the right side? Yes, I did. So, funnily enough, I can actually use this rod to provide force on one side while I push from the other, which is kind of nice, but I probably need, I just need to push down with some force on either side, which is a bit difficult. There aren't many tools. Could probably do it with a pair of pliers, but didn't want to exactly dig through my pile of stuff to find my pliers at the moment, so that didn't really go down at all. Let's try that again. Maybe that's as far as it goes down. I'm actually checking the next picture. So I've got that surface flat with that, and I'm pretty sure it's supposed to protrude given that that's a hexagonal. Yes, it is. So if you have a look in there. What's going to be the best way to do this? Probably force it down like that. Yep, that seems to have worked pretty well. And then we can just push the bearing from this side. That looks good. Awesome. So next we move on to this part. So we're going to just put this gear stuff down first, making sure there's no edges it could catch on the inside. And this plastic looks like it was molded pretty well, so I don't really have any concerns, but just rubbing my finger back and forward. There's a couple of higher spots. We do have some tricks we can do here. So they did actually provide some sandpaper. So we can make use of that and just run it back and forward a couple of times. Oh, it's not easy in the slightest. Wonder what grit sandpaper this is. It must be pretty high. So I'm actually having to go pretty lightly here. Okay, and then we just rotated my finger a bit more. And those high points seem to have gone, so that was actually pretty effective. Definitely worth doing that. Now, I actually suppose I should probably make the decision about what weight ball grease I use here. Do I use a high viscosity or do I use a low viscosity? I think I'm going to use the low viscosity. Now the reason I have to make the decision now is basically because I want to get some grease on the inside there, and it's easiest to do that now rather than filling the ball diff up with grease later. Can make it a bit messier and hard to get on, but at least you can guarantee that you've got grease underneath the gears. Okay, so a whole bunch of white stuff in there. Get the gear stuff on now. Watch as my fingers get really messy really quickly. That's fine, because that is rotating super smooth, so that was definitely a good idea. Okay, so now we've got the spider, which is this black piece here. And we just do a bit of a pre-fit here, and we'll put little legs on and everything, but we're actually going to grease this up as well. Basically just trying to make sure everything moves smoothly, and that we don't need to process the plastic at all to get rid of any burrs or anything. I did notice with all these gears, they're not perfectly circular. Two sides have been smoothed off, which is fine. Doesn't appear to have an impact, but just worth noting. The other reason why you want to coat the legs of the spider with grease is so you can do that. You can see the gear at the bottom isn't falling off, so it just holds everything in place as well as lubricates it on, which makes maneuvering it around a lot simpler. Now I'm actually going to need tweezers, I think. We'll use this instead. And you do have to be aware that you are contaminating your hands with grease at the moment, and to just keep a tissue close by and clean as you go, because otherwise you end up with grease on the weirdest things. Like this is contaminated with grease, but I'm just being cautious around it more than anything else. So they're saying to put thrust bearing grease in, but they tend to just suggest greases at random. That's why I'm using a ball diff grease. Okay, that's all rotating in perfectly like that. I'm just rotating it in now. You might not be able to see it, but the small gears are rotating, and they're actually rotating pretty smoothly. But what's more interesting is normally when you do that, the diff will actually pop out like quite easily, and that one is staying in place, which is always a good sign that you've done something right. So the next step is actually to seal up the diff. So I'm going to take this opportunity to just pack it with grease. And I'm not going to really care about if the grease overflows. Just trying to make sure it gets into all the nooks and crannies. Even if you want a air quote open diff, you still definitely want to get some grease in there. You just probably want low viscosity grease. And you probably want a grease that's more of a paste rather than an oil. Under high speeds especially, the oil is viscous enough that it'll fling out. But not only that, the higher the temperature, the more viscous it becomes. So anything that's like almost a liquid to start off with is just going to become super thin as the diff starts rotating. So you're better off with something a bit thicker. And by thicker I don't mean stickier, I just mean more of a paste that will basically liquidize once the diff is under power. Cool. Let's clean that off because I'm not going to need that again. Let's put the top gear on. See how that all fits. It's looking pretty good. Bit of overflow, but that's alright. That'll be captured in a sec. Now, from what I understand of this diff, I can just put this through the center here, like so, and rotate. And I'm just rotating in both directions to pick up the grease and seeing where it overflows, and that's looking pretty good. And then, if I've got this right, I should just be able to put the cap on over the top and rotate it into place. Perfect. So now let's see if we can find the screws I need for this. I'm making pretty good headway today, which is good. Now I'm going to assume it's the smallest screws I've got here. Although these also look pretty promising. Are these formula? 4.9. Maybe it's these bigger screws. How big is the head on those? And I dropped it. Wow, those squares are almost screw. I guess it really comes down to the hole size. So okay, it is these smaller screws. If you're ever in doubt as to which screw goes in there, definitely just eyeball the screws, because more often than not, that's actually telling as to what screw goes in there. Unfortunately, there isn't a good camera angle to watch me screw these screws in, but then again, that's probably not the most interesting thing in the world. Now, I did talk about making sure your hands are not contaminated with grease. And where that becomes important is not getting that grease on the surface of your screwdrivers. Some of those greases are slippery and some of them are fairly grippy. But either way, you'll find that if you're having to apply a lot of force, your hand is going to slip on the screwdriver underneath that and contaminate any plastic grips like that if you do have them. So we're not over tightening these screws, we're just getting them to sit flat. It's very easy to over tighten the screws on the atomic diffs, and that ends up ruining them very, very quickly. You might not notice it the first time you do it, but if you ever have to unscrew it and rescrew it back up, you'll find that you'll have to tighten it even more and more and more each time you redo it, and then eventually you end up splitting the plastic. So just enough to be tight. Don't have to apply too much force. Once it stops turning, that's it. And then once you've got them all in, you just go back in and tighten them all again, just to be sure. Okay, so this diff is looking pretty solid. So compared to most of the atomic diffs I've constructed, this has been pretty decent actually. Pretty good all in all. Haven't over tightened it, I haven't done anything else, it's gone together pretty well. Okay, so even that light grease is probably a tiny bit too much, but maybe that'll wear in a bit. Just trying to make sure it's not over tightened. I'm sure it'll probably loosen up once it's all compressed. Whoops. Well, that's interesting. That's very interesting, so that doesn't stay in like that. Okay. So I really did pack that in with grease, and even though it's a light grease, if you have that much grease in there, if you pack a diff with grease, basically, it doesn't matter how light it is, it will actually tighten up a bit. So I could have probably done with a tiny bit less grease, but I wanted somewhere actually halfway between high viscosity and low viscosity. And I can always gouge that grease out later if I need to. I tend to find with diffs that after you've run them in a couple of times anyway, they do tend to soften up. So, and I'm just going to tighten that one more time. Now I did say that this diff does not have a lip on this cap that I'm just securing. And that's why I'm tightening it up a bit, because when I built my GLR, I had a lot of diff grease actually come out of the edge there. When running with a 12,000 kA motor, it got so hot on the ball plates the diff oil became a liquid and actually sprayed out. And while I was driving, I could see this little spray from one of the tires where it was just diff grease. It was kind of incredible. So need to chuck a ball bearing on there. Let's chuck the half shield to the outside. How am I going to do that? Let's squeeze it a bit and push it down. Not sure if that's supposed to stick up a bit or... Okay, no, that's gone down. Good. Okay, that's made the... That's centered the ball diff a bit, which is good. And 362 and a 362, so then want another one on the other side. Which, I mean, all in all, that actually makes the ball diff pretty heavy if you think about it. So pick one of these nice big ones. Perfect, and then we can push down again. Make sure you push down on the outside of the bearing as well, not on the inside. I guess it doesn't matter if you push down on the inside too much, as long as you're not pushing down on the little metal sheet. That's definitely what you don't want to do. So you actually want to either load the outside or the inside, but not where this blue part is. So now there should be room for an E-clip. I'm not seeing that, however. So I'm just going to pull that back out and see if I put a too large a bearing in there. Maybe I did. While that's also happening, I just want to quickly see if I can find my E-clip pusher. Because I actually have a dedicated tool for adding and removing E-clips. Oh, what's that from? Oh. And unfortunately, all my tools are all over the place at the moment. So. Nope, okay, I might have to do this with pliers then. Such a shame, that E-clip thing is a lifesaver. So I'm just going to remeasure these bearings as well. There's two different widths here, and I'm wondering if I just put the wrong width on for this E-clip. While I'm at it, I'll grab one of these as well, because I'm going to need that to secure the gears in. So put that back together, zero it, clamp it. That's 1.8, and this is probably about 3. 2.2. So maybe I do have my ball bearings mixed up here. So I'll just pop this one back out. Swap that back in. Can quite easily swap this over. Push it back down. That's right, this one was a bit difficult to push down, wasn't it? So rotate and push. Yeah, and that's sitting a lot flatter, so let's go with those. Put those ones back. And hopefully this time when I put this all together, I'll be able to see the E-clip line. So there's a little line about here for the E-clip. Yep, and I can see it a lot clearer. So those are the right ones I need. So where did the E-clips for this go? Are they in a bag I've already opened? Fingers crossed they are. Maybe maybe not though. Okay, so they're not in the ball bearing bag. Oh, okay, so they're in the spacers bag. So I'm going to have one more look for this Eclipse tool because it's absolutely incredible. And I really don't want to be without it. Okay, didn't see it there. It's probably telling me that I need to organise my tools a lot better. And it's not there. We're going to have to cheat a bit. So I'll pull out a pair of proper pliers. Get this started by using the tweezers. Now, going back to contaminated tools, if you've got grease on something like this, you're going to have a lot of trouble working with the Eclipse. They're going to stick to the tool, or even if the tool is magnetized, you're going to have a lot of trouble breaking, getting the Eclipse detached from the tool itself. Right, that's done. We now have a diff. So that was lucky. That Eclipse actually went on pretty smoothly, but oh, that'll be so nice once it's broken in. So we now put the spur gear on. Now it doesn't seem to have a left or a right side. It can go on either anyway. So let's just slide this on. Like so. Seems good. And then we put that O-ring on that quite sneakily snuck out of one of the bags earlier while looking for something else. And if we pull on it, it's actually not coming off. So seems like a bit of a flimsy thing, but it actually does allow the gear to move a bit, which is actually, turns out it's actually a good idea to allow that. But overall, that is looking like a pretty solid diff. Apart from the fact that it's not a solid diff, it's a limited slip. I really should stop it with the jokes. People comment about my jokes and how good they are. People are very, very open about the feedback of my jokes, is probably another way of putting it. Some people love them and some people hate them. So we are going to need some white shims here. And we're only going to do a test fit here, so it's nothing major. Okay, so they're fully metal shielded bearings. So I'm not going to bother with the white shims or anything. I'm just going to put that on and just show off what this looks like. There we go. As you can see, that spins for a long time. In fact, one of the bearings was even out and it was still spinning for a long time. So I'm going to say that this is a pretty... Let's do that. So I'll secure it on this side. And so I think we're onto a winner with this rear diff. Very, very, very low resistance. So you should get under power a lot less turn or twisting, which is one of the issues I have with the GLR. And that actually might be just due to how I've constructed it more than anything else, but the GLR likes to twist under power with a 12,000K motor, but that said, everything likes to twist or have torque steer with a 12,000K motor when it comes to the Mini Z sized cars. So it'll be interesting to see how this one does with a, well, I'm only going to 5,000 kV on this, but it'll be interesting. So I can already feel this smoothing up, and I think just running it in a bit more is definitely going to help. So I'd probably, this is going to hurt my arm a bit, but running up and down my arm a bit to get some movement in it. But nothing's going to beat hitting it at full speed with a motor for a good 30 seconds or so in bursts. Cool. Well, this is just going to be a short video. I'm going to leave it there. It's only been half an hour, almost on the dot. So next thing is front suspension. Once again, I don't know when that's going to be because it's going to be another very, very unpredictable and busy week for me. But hopefully earlier in the week rather than later in the week. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all around. Keep on building.